You know what's weird? As I film this, we don't know yet who will be the next president of the US. But when this video goes live, we should. So, at this moment, I don't know yet. But you should. And that's just really weird. But that's all I'm gonna say about that. Hello there, I'm Simon. Welcome to my channel. Today's topic is the answer to the most important question in the universe, which is, what about dragons? More specifically, I've been wondering, are dragons dinosaurs? Like, they're big, dangerous creatures with claws and teeth, so it's not like there's no similarities. But are they? Like, technically? From a semantic, taxonomic, pedantic point of view? Well, I guess the first step is to find out what it actually takes to be considered a dinosaur. Are there official criteria? How do paleontologists determine if something is a dinosaur or not? Turns out that's a little more complicated than one might think, because there's a ginormous amount of creatures that are all considered dinosaurs, but that vary so much that they don't seem to have any similar characteristics at all. For example, canaries and crocodiles are technically both dinosaurs, but I think we can agree that they don't share a whole lot of features. So I guess the question is, how do we determine what's technically a dinosaur? What is it that these guys have in common that makes them a technical dinosaur? Their ancestors. Turns out all of these are dinosaurs kinda just because they share some common ancestors. Okay, it's a little more complicated than that. As far as I understand it, and I am not an expert in any way, shape or form, everything that's ever been alive is related to each other in one huge family tree. So that includes us, it includes your cat, it includes the dinosaurs, and I think it actually even includes viruses. Which in a ridiculous way makes this whole pandemic a family feud that got way out of hand. Anyway, everything is related, but because of evolution, different organisms evolved differently, creating over time a whole family tree of creatures that are all vastly different but are still related. And because they are related, they still share features with each other. And the closer they are related, the more features they share. That makes sense, right? Now, the dinosaurs are one of the branches of this family tree. And from this branch come the crocodiles and the canaries. Now, I could be fancy about it and say that the dinosaurs are what's called a monophylactic group. But that's a scientific term that I barely understand, so I probably shouldn't use it. So paleontologists look at the fossils they find and they unleash their science on it to gather all the data they can possibly gather. And then they use that data to figure out what kind of creature they're dealing with and to see where it fits in the tree. So that's how they determine whether or not a creature is a dinosaur. Of course, there are a couple of characteristics that this branch shares, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Here's the thing. We can't really do this with dragons, because they're fictional creatures, and you can't really fit imagination into a nice scientific taxonomy, because everyone imagines it differently, and even if characteristics are the same, people are unlikely to take into account the history and evolution of how these creatures came to be. Well, unless you're talking, I guess. Like, if you try hard enough, it's possible to put together a sort of family tree of all the dragons that were ever imagined. But they were never meant to be in a taxonomy like that. It would be a tree of ideas, more than an actual biological, evolutionary tree. And even if you could somehow get that, you'll have trouble connecting that to the real taxonomy of the dinosaurs. I think there's just too many missing links for that. So that's not gonna work. I think we're gonna have to resort to the list. But before I actually reveal the list, we should probably talk a little bit about the dragons. Because which dragons are we even evaluating? There's a lot of different types of dragons. There's what I would call the typical European dragon. You know, 4 legs, bare wings, Spitfire, those guys. But there's also the wyvern, which is basically the European dragon, except it only has 2 legs. And then there's the Eastern dragon, which is like 10 kilometers long and has as many legs as it takes to support that length. And then there are the kind of dragons that turn into humans to make babies, mainly because they believe they can, because that's the thing that exists in literature these days. And mythology has too many dragon/serpentine monsters to count. Greek mythology has the Hydra, the Python, not the coding language, the beast Apollo had to slay to become master of Delphi, and of course Ladon, who was faced by Herc and Jason. Egypt has Apophis, arch nemesis of Ra, which is mostly just a huge snake, and Amut, the hideous creatures that eat souls of bad people. And I haven't even mentioned Dungeons and Dragons yet. In D&D, there's about 20 million types of dragon. Many of them are differentiated by color. And like, these are metallic. Well, those have to do with gems, stuff like that. But morphologically, they seem to mostly just be the European type. But then there are the ones who want to be fancy about it. Like, there are dragons with 3 heads. Some of them don't have wings. There's literally a breed called dragon turtles, which lives in the sea. And Dracosphinx is a thing in D&D, apparently. Oh, and I can't forget about the half-dragons and dragonborns. I'm not even sure that those are the same thing. Heck, there's literally a dragon in D&D called Garrix. As in Gary Gygax, co-creator of Dungeons and Dragons. It's like they desperately wanted more dragons and just ran out of inspiration. It's like they rolled a nat 1 on inspiration, which doesn't make any sense at all, but whatever, you get the idea. I have gotten really scared to ever actually use a dragon in a campaign. Though to be fair, D&D dragons are probably the most realistic evolution-wise. The point is that there are a lot of different types of dragons. So which one are we evaluating? All of them? Or one specific type? Is it enough to prove that, for example, a Chinese long dragon is a dinosaur? And prove by default that all of them are dinosaurs? After all, if a taxonomy can be made that contains all the dragons, that would prove that all dragons are related. And so if one dragon is related to the dinosaurs, that would mean that all of them are, right? Well, no. Let's do a thought experiment. If I ever had a kid, hypothetically, then that kid would be related to the family of the mother and my own family. But that wouldn't mean that I'm related to any of her family, or vice versa, for that matter. Preferably not. That would be bad. Also, any taxonomy of dragons would be a taxonomy of ideas, rather than a biological one. And mixing metaphors is not a good idea. So I think I'm just going to give you the list of criteria and let you decide for yourself. I myself am going to check for the European dragon, because apparently I'm still Eurocentric. So this list is from the site of the British National History Museum. Here we go. 1. They had an upright stance, with legs perpendicular to the body, meaning they stand rather than, slither. And their legs stick out straight down instead of sideways. This unfortunately rules out the Chinese dragon as a dinosaur, because of the way its legs stick out. Interestingly, it also rules out reptiles, like crocodiles and snakes, even though those are literally descended from the dinosaurs. I guess they lost their dinosaur cards along the way. 2. They laid eggs. Check. Pretty much every version of a dragon that I know of lays eggs. 3. They lived on land, not in the sea. Well, I'm pretty sure that D&D has a bunch of aquatic dragons, and I guess the Loch Ness monster could be considered a type of dragon, but the typical European dragon pretty much always lives on land. So I'm gonna say yes for that one. 4. Their skull had a hole between the eye socket and nostril. I don't know. People don't usually go quite that deep into the anatomy of a dragon, so there's no way to really know. Also, I haven't got a clue what that hole is for, so I'm just gonna say yes. And finally, because there's only 5 points on this list, they also had 2 holes behind the eye socket. More holes in the skull. These were apparently for the muscles of the jaw. So I'm not sure dragons have those holes, but they usually have good jaws, and their heads look very dinosaur-y, so I'm just gonna assume they do. So after all that, is your favorite dragon a dinosaur? Technically? Let me know down below. But you may notice that by these criteria, some of the creatures that you may have previously thought were dinosaurs aren't technically dinosaurs. Yeah, that's because they're not technically dinosaurs. They're just a different branch of the tree. That's all. Here's why that's important. It's important because it shows that there's a difference between the scientific point of view and the popular point of view. A lot can be said about this, but what's important is that there is a difference at all. Because the public doesn't care about scientific classification and taxonomy. It's like, technically Pluto isn't a planet, but everyone just agrees that it is. The public sees huge dangerous beasts that lived a long time ago. Like, it makes sense to throw them all on the same pile. So the question remains, do dragons go on that pile too? I'd say yes, because there are some interesting details that bridge the gap quite perfectly. Do you know where the word dinosaur comes from? It comes from the Greek words deinos, which means terrible, and sauros, which means lizard. So a dinosaur is etymologically just a terrible lizard. And I think it's safe to say that that description applies quite well to dragons. Also, you know where the idea for dragons comes from? Well, there's probably a bunch of different sources, but one of the theories that I myself do believe was at least a factor is the findings of fossils, of skeletons of dinosaurs. So basically, dragons were probably based on dinosaurs to begin with. So in a pretty literal way, dragons are definitely dinosaurs. But what do you think? Let me know down below. Let's make this a new is a hot dog a sandwich? Yes. Or is cereal soup? No. And that brings me seamlessly to the YouTube thing. Again, you know the drill, right? Please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Or if I made a mistake somewhere, please correct me. Also click that like button, because I put a lot of work into this, and it would be a shame if it went unliked. That's right, I'm gonna guilt trip you into liking. Is it working? If you liked the video, you can go to my channel to check out my other stuff. And if you like what you see, please subscribe and ring the bell, so you'll be the first to know when there's a new video. And share the video if you know anyone who would be interested in it. Or you could always just share it on your social pages. You never know. Speaking of social pages, you can find mine in the description box below, as well as my sources. And now it is time to end this. Thanks for watching.